as you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough. That's enough.
At 88 years old, Robert Redford, the calm cornerstone of New Hollywood, has finally done what no director, biographer, or studio boss could ever coax out of him. He talked. What spilled onto the table wasn't nostalgia. It was a handwritten blacklist of 7 heavyweight names who, behind the glamour, turned his golden career into a slow burn ordeal.
A man not to be trusted, but nobody else was in that place because he had the power. And
Few were obvious. The volcanic tempers tabloids feasted on for decades. But others? They'll punch clean through the warm glow of your favorite classics. Redford didn't rant. He didn't swear. He simply tapped the paper and said, "Talent without respect is just noise." In that instant, Hollywood myth cracked open. And the first name on his list? Let's just say you probably stream his most famous film every December. Ready to meet the storm Redford kept bottled for half a century? Stay right here, because calm just became confession, and the fallout is about to rewrite movie history, one legend at a time. Gene Hackman. The storm hit Redford long before the world called him a legend. It was 1969, on the frozen ridge set of Downhill Racer, and the man bringing the blizzard was Gene Hackman. Hackman barreled into rehearsals like a runaway tank, voice booming, eyes blazing, demanding retakes before the first slate even clapped. Redford, all glacier cool focus, tried diplomacy, but the chill in the air turned Arctic fast. Crew members later said you could feel the temperature drop whenever the two men locked eyes. Hackman lived for brute force acting, shouting through table reads, slamming props, ripping the subtlety out of quiet beats. Redford lived for precision, harmony, the slow burn. Fire met ice, sparks flew. In private, Redford began calling him a sledgehammer in a violin shop, a compliment wrapped in a warning. The fuse finally burned out on a day meant for whispered emotion. No skis, no stunts, just fragile confession. Hackman spotted what he called garbage lighting, spat a curse, and barricaded himself in his trailer. Production froze. An assistant sprinted for Redford. He walked the snowy path alone, opened the trailer door, and dropped 8 frosty words that still echo in Hollywood lore. "This isn't your movie, Gene. Show up or leave." Hackman showed, the scene sang, but every heartbeat after that felt like walking a fault line. The fallout was silent, yet lethal. Casting sheets bearing Hackman's name soon returned with crimson notes. Not worth it. Years later, Redford conceded the man's talent was undeniable, but warned friends that brilliance without respect leaves wreckage. Hackman marched on, Oscars in hand, temper intact. Redford marched too, carrying one new rule etched in ice: never let raw power drown out harmony. And if Hackman's thunder rattled Redford's cage, the next name on the blacklist would strike like lightning in a locked room.
Yeah, but that's going to happen. That just comes with the territory. I'm kind of used to that.
James Woods. The next clash didn't unfold under studio lights. It detonated inside a bland casting office in 1988. Reports say Redford was quietly assembling a lean courtroom thriller when an audition slot landed on his desk. James Woods. The name came with a reputation, razor-sharp wit, volcanic opinions. But none of that prepared Redford for what walked through the door. Woods opened the scene with surgical precision, every syllable knifing the air. For 30 electric seconds, the room was mesmerized. Then, midline, he cut the performance, tossed the script aside, and launched into a full-tilt debate on U.S. foreign policy in Vietnam. Producers blinked. The camcorder kept rolling. Redford, ever the diplomat, tried steering back to story, but Woods doubled down. Statistics, battle maps, moral outrage. Witnesses recall the exchange turning icy. Woods challenged Redford's idealistic pacifism, accusing Hollywood of peddling sanitized conflict. Redford, jaw tight, listened for 2 minutes before closing his binder. "We're here to find character, not rewrite history," he said, voice measured yet lethal. Woods fired back, claiming character and history were the same battlefield. Silence sucked the air from the room. Redford stood, offered a curt handshake that never touched skin, and walked out. Casting sheets later showed one handwritten verdict beside Woods' name: never, ever. Industry buzz spread fast. Woods, in future interviews, hurled barbed references to peace-preaching generals who secretly run studios like boot camps. Insiders read between the lines. They heard Redford called out without being named. Yet Redford refused to bite. He simply locked the door on every role Woods pursued in his orbit. "There's a fine line between tension and toxicity," he told a friend, "and some actors sprint across it." Woods' talent stayed undeniable, but the phone from Redford's camp never rang again. If that audition felt like a lightning strike, the partnership that followed would be a slow-motion tremor, one where a celebrated co-star turned every scripted line into a live wire.
I had a real hard time with it, and I felt like I was losing something.
Enter the newsroom and watch history crackle with Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman. The newsroom floor at Warner Brothers in 1975 looked calm enough. Phones ringing, typewriters clacking, extras murmuring about Watergate. But just off camera, two very different storms collided. Dustin Hoffman thrived on chaos. He treated every take of All the President's Men like opening night of experimental theater, riffing new lines, shifting his stance, even moving half a step into Redford's carefully plotted light. Redford, who'd spent weeks mapping eye lines and pacing so the tension would build like a metronome, watched the rhythm unravel in real time. Crew members say Hoffman would rehearse a scene one way, then on the very first camera take whisper an entirely new question down the phone, forcing Redford to react without warning. 7 separate versions of a single phone call sequence ended up on the slate. By take 5, Redford's jaw was clenched so tight the boom mic caught his teeth grinding. Director Alan J. Prost. Pakula tried to play referee, praise the energy, keep the story intact, but even he admitted later that the set felt like tracking live wires across wet pavement. One lighting tech swore the studio temperature dropped every time the word reset echoed through the rafters. Still, Redford never exploded. Instead, he pulled Pakula aside and, as insiders recall, whispered, "We're chasing narrative, not fireworks. Rein him in, or this film shatters." Pakula compromised, slicing Hoffman's wilder riffs in the edit while preserving enough sparks to keep critics raving. The result was cinematic history. Yet when press junkets begged for a sequel-worthy reunion, Redford answered with 4 clipped words. "Once was enough. Thanks." Hoffman moved on to the next crusade. Redford carried a new scar, proof that improvisation can cut just as deep as ego. He figured he'd faced every flavor of creative friction until a smiling blockbuster king arrived on his next set, flanked by brand consultants and marketing slide decks.
The hard part was wearing the 2 hats because of how I feel about acting and how I feel about directing.
Because when Tom Cruise walked in, the clash wasn't about art versus instinct anymore. It was art versus corporate optics. And Redford was about to learn how loud diplomacy can get when money holds the megaphone. Tom Cruise. By 2007, Redford thought he'd survived every storm. Then Tom Cruise strutted into the Lions for Lambs war room with a grin and a pack of PR strategists. From the first handshake, 2 worlds collided. Redford's stripped down, message-first filmmaking versus Cruise's global image machine. A kickoff script meeting iced over when Cruise unrolled a chart of resonance metrics for his character. Redford blinked. He wanted moral gray. Cruise wanted heroic silhouettes. Rehearsals got stranger. While Redford drilled raw debates on war, Cruise paused scenes to tweak a collar, tilt a key light, or ask if his optics felt inspiring enough. Crew whispered, "Director 2," though no one dared laugh near Redford. One afternoon, Cruise halted a take, stepped behind the camera, and ordered a tighter lens for audience empathy. Redford, voice flat, asked, "Are we telling a story or shooting a promo?" Even costuming became a battlefield. Cruise kept stylists on standby during blocking, so his silhouette projected discipline, Redford confided later. "I'm after vulnerability. He's optimizing symmetry." The real crack widened in the edit bay. Cruise, credited as producer, demanded alternate cuts of almost every dialogue beat he appeared in. He sent notes on reaction shot length, tested taglines with focus groups, even lobbied for a music swell under his final speech. Redford, exhausted, fired back once. Silence sometimes speaks louder than strings. The studio sided with Cruise. Critics labeled the film earnest but bewildered, and opening weekend sputtered. Redford skipped the red carpet entirely, slipping in after the lights dimmed and out before credits rolled. He never worked or spoke with crews again. Asked years later, Redford sighed. Some partners teach craft. Others teach boundaries. Boundaries, however, wouldn't help against the next storm. A perfectionist in stilettos who trusted no one, not even Sundance himself.
But I do like it. I like kidding people. To me, that's a sign of affection.
Faye Dunaway was waiting, and her demands would make crews feel like a summer breeze. Faye Dunaway. On 3 days of the Condor, Faye Dunaway carried storm clouds in her carry-on. Reports say she arrived each dawn armed with fresh script notes, demanded to see last night's dailies, and questioned every camera angle like it was cross-examination. Redford, crisp, precise, running on quiet trust, watched the set warp into a daily negotiation. Dunaway didn't whisper doubts. She lobbed them. Lighting felt off. She called for a reset. Line felt flat. She rewrote it at lunch and expected everyone to keep up. Tension finally cracked during a small, moody scene meant to hum with unspoken danger. Dunaway wanted a fifth take, chasing a hairbreadth shift in her tone. Crew was tired, the clock bleeding overtime. Redford, fighting to keep momentum, murmured, "Instincts already on film." Dunaway shot back. "Perfection hasn't even walked on set yet." The room froze. Minutes later, behind a closed door, witnesses heard Redford's voice. Low, sharp, cut the air. "It's espionage, Faye, not Chekhov." She exited without a word, stilettos clicking like a metronome of war. From that moment, every shared shot felt like balancing on piano wire. Dunaway reviewed her close-ups nightly. Redford skipped playback entirely, trusting memory over monitors. Off camera, they spoke only through assistants. One insider swears Redford requested a double for insert shots after Dunaway wrapped, anything to avoid one more round of microscopic notes. When the film scored rave reviews, both stars smiled for photographers, but the space between them could fit another camera crew. Asked later about Dunaway, Redford offered a thin grin. "She's unforgettable." Dunaway called him the ultimate professional, though insiders heard a colder word behind the smile. Predictable. Farewells were polite. Reunions never happened. Redford thought the storm was over, but the next set would prove louder. Because when Robert Duvall joined The Natural, improv jazz crashed head-on into orchestral precision, turning one quiet baseball epic into the noisiest duel of his career. Robert Duvall sauntered onto the diamond of The Natural with the swagger of a jazz trumpeter about to riff over someone else's concerto. From day one, his mantra was, "Feel it in the gut," which translated to shredding lines in the makeup chair and lobbing fresh ad-libs the second Redford yelled, "Ready." Redford, who had spent weeks timing every breath of Roy Hobbs-like sheet music, watched the rhythm collapse into free-form noise. One moment, Duvall cracked a sardonic joke that wasn't in any draft. The next, he shifted left just enough to yank Redford out of his key light. Cast and crew learned to brace for impact whenever the camera rolled. Takes could swing from lyrical to lunatic in 60 seconds. The boiling point came during a pivotal clubhouse face-off. Redford needed a tight, surgical beat to complete Hobbs's emotional arc. Duvall, itching to loosen the screws, kept undercutting tension with sly new punchlines. After a fourth derailment, Redford cut the scene cold, walked straight up to Duvall, and hissed, "It's not your movie." Duvall fired back, "It isn't anyone's until it's alive." The set fell silent except for the tape still whirring in the camera. 15 raw minutes that crew members still call the most electric standoff they've ever witnessed. Director Barry Levinson broke the stalemate, but the damage was done. Every take afterward felt like balancing on barbed wire. When the film wrapped, Redford politely praised Duvall's brilliance in public, then inserted one blunt note into future casting packets. "Jazz is beautiful until it drowns the melody." Duvall never answered, but insiders say the two made sure their press tours stayed continents apart. Lessons were learned, scars were added, and Redford quietly vowed never again to let free-range improvisation hijack a story's heartbeat. Yet even this fiery duel couldn't match the ache of the next name on his list, because the final fracture wasn't born of rage at all, but of trust that evaporated between two icons. who once rode the same legend into Hollywood immortality.
Well, I guess what I see is that history repeats itself.
Paul Newman. Paul Newman. Long before Hollywood called them the perfect duo, Robert Redford thought Paul Newman was the one co-star who truly understood him. Two outlaws in Butch Cassidy, two grifters in The Sting, brothers in mischief beneath a single marquee. But between those hits, something delicate cracked. Biographers claim the chill arrived when Newman quietly took special consultant status on The Sting. All at once, he wasn't just the blue-eyed rogue. He was a power broker with script pages in one hand and studio brass in his back pocket. Redford felt the shift the first time Newman slid his chair to the head of a story meeting and asked, "What if we open with my angle instead?" Laughter rippled. Redford's stomach nodded. From then on, each creative debate felt like Chess Newman had started 3 moves earlier. Wardrobe tests stalled over the exact gleam of Newman's cufflinks. Lighting setups were tweaked because Paul's eyes pop in cooler tones. Redford, raised on teamwork, began to see an invisible tape line dividing his space from Paul's. To close friends, he called Newman charming, but always building a taller fence. On set, the smiles held, but insiders noticed the pair rarely shared downtime. Newman gravitated to executives, Redford to crew. When studios dangled a third collaboration, Redford skimmed the scripts, shrugged, and muttered the timing felt wrong. Truth was, trust had leaked out one silent drop at a time until nothing remained but polite nostalgia. Publicly, they stayed legends on a single pedestal. Privately, they drifted like two ships that lost the same star. No outburst, no scandal, just the slow erosion of something once electric. With Newman, Redford's secret list reaches its last page. 7 names, 7 scars, and one towering question for every movie lover. How much legend can you keep once you've seen the shadows behind the screen? 7 names, each one a different slice of Hollywood thunder, pulled the curtain back on Robert Redford's carefully protected calm. Gene Hackman taught him that raw force without respect can splinter a set in seconds. James Woods proved brilliant minds can still poison a room. Dustin Hoffman showed how improvisation, unchecked, can snap a story's spine. Tom Cruise reminded him that branding sometimes shouts louder than truth. Faye Dunaway revealed the cost of perfecting every inch until the soul leaks out. Robert Duvall made it clear that jazz-style freedom can drown a symphony. And Paul Newman, his once inseparable partner, proved that even friendship can fade when quiet ambition builds taller walls. Redford never screamed these lessons from a podium. He etched them in silence, tucked behind diplomatic smiles. Yet the scars shaped every choice that followed, from Sundance's birth to the scripts he quietly shelved. His blacklist isn't about revenge. It's a roadmap of boundaries, a reminder that talent needs discipline, passion needs trust, and collaboration only truly works when ego takes the back seat. So, next time you stream a classic and feel the on-screen chemistry crackle, remember the friction you can't see. The whispered arguments, the shattered takes, the friendships slowly eroding under studio lights. Legends shine brightest against the darkest shadows. Now the question swings to you. Which clash shocked you most? And do you still watch those films the same way? Drop your take in the comments, tap subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories, and ring that bell, because the next revelation might just redraw another line in movie history.